Ever asked yourself why a small peninsula in East Asia decided one day to split itself in two and say, hey, let's make this interesting? Well, that's the curious case of Korea for you. Nestled in the heart of East Asia, this little peninsula was once a unified entity, united, harmonious, and minding its own business. Then one day it woke up and thought, you know what, I fancy a bit of a change. And just like that we ended up with two Koreas, one up north, the other down south. As different as chalk and cheese, yet bound by the same roots. Imagine having a sibling who's your polar opposite. Well, that's essentially the two Koreas. It's like someone gave history a plot twist it didn't see coming. So buckle up, folks, because we're about to dive into the slightly bipolar world of Korean history. The year was 1945, World War II had just ended and the Cold War was just starting to put on its winter coat. As the dust settled on the global battlefield, two superpowers emerged, the United States and the Soviet Union. Now these two were about as different as chalk and cheese, or, let's say, a hot dog and a bowl of borscht. The United States, a capitalist democracy, stood for freedom and individual rights. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, was a communist state championing equality and state control. Now imagine these two trying to decide the fate of a small peninsula in East Asia, known as Korea. Yeah, it went about as well as a cat and a dog trying to decide who gets the comfy spot on the couch. The United States and the Soviet Union, with their massively different ideologies, couldn't agree on the time of day, let alone the governance of an entire nation. They decided to temporarily split Korea along the 38th parallel, with the US handling the south and the Soviets taking care of the north. It was like they were saying, let's see who can run this place better. The problem was, neither of them was willing to pass the baton afterward. Of course, each superpower wanted its side of Korea to follow its own ideology. The US wanted a democratic capitalist South Korea. The Soviets desired a communist North Korea, and thus, what was meant to be a temporary solution became a permanent division. This clash led to a chess game of politics, with each superpower making moves to establish their ideology in their half of Korea. It was like a game of Risk, but with real countries and real consequences. So there you have it, folks, the birth of two Koreas, all because two superpowers couldn't agree on a movie night. Now imagine having a sibling you can't stand, but you're stuck sharing a room with them. That's North and South Korea for you. In the grand scheme of historical spats, the Korean War is essentially the equivalent of two siblings fighting over who gets the top bunk. It all kicked off in the early 1950s when North Korea, like the big brother who's been hitting the gym, decided to flex its muscles and invade the South. The South, not one to back down, retaliated. And voila, you've got yourself the Korean War. This wasn't just a pillow fight that got out of hand, though. No, this was a 3-year-long tussle that saw some serious international intervention. It was like when your parents step in to break up a fight, only this time the parents were the United Nations, and instead of sending the kids to their rooms, they sent in troops and tanks. When the dust settled, both sides agreed to a ceasefire, but not before drawing a line in the sand, or rather, across the 38th parallel. This resulted in the creation of the Demilitarized Zone, the most heavily armed border in the world. It's like building a wall down the middle of the bedroom because you can't agree on who gets to play with the toy soldiers. Ever since then, North and South Korea have been in a perpetual game of one-upmanship. From nuclear tests to K-pop music, it's been a constant battle of anything you can do, I can do better. It's like they're both trying to prove who's the favorite child, only instead of acing a math test or scoring the winning goal, they're showcasing military might and economic prowess. And like any good sibling rivalry, there's always a bit of copying involved. The South builds a towering skyscraper, the North builds one taller. It's like they're stuck in a never-ending game of Simon Says, only Simon is a military general. And the stakes are a little higher than just losing a game. And that, my friends, is how you turn a family feud into a full-blown military standoff. So, if you've been following along, you know that Korea's division is a lot like a bad breakup. Let's take a moment to jog our memories. We kicked things off with the curious case of Korea, a nation that was just minding its own business until outside forces decided to play matchmaker. The Cold War, that icy period of global tension, set the scene. The United States and Soviet Union, playing a real-life game of Risk, divided Korea at the 38th parallel, like a pizza that no one could agree on how to slice. Next, we delved into the ideological differences that further fueled the fire. The North, under Soviet influence, took a liking to communism, while the South, backed by the US, championed democracy. It's like one sibling deciding to become a vegan while the other insists on a carnivorous diet. Talk about a recipe for disaster. Our story then took a violent turn with the Korean War, a 3-year-long sibling squabble that was anything but playful. It was the equivalent of a food fight, escalating into a full-blown brawl with the whole world watching and taking sides. The aftermath? A heavily fortified border and 2 Koreas stubbornly refusing to make peace. And let's not forget the current standoff, a tense game of chicken that's been going on for over 7 decades. Today, the Demilitarized Zone, better known as the DMZ, stands as a stark reminder of this ongoing feud. It's like a shared bedroom with a line drawn in the middle, and woe betide anyone who dares to cross it. So there we have it, an epic saga that started with a slice of pizza and ended up with the world's most fortified border. Through this tale we see that even nations can fall out, just like siblings fighting over the last slice of pizza. And there you have it, folks, the tale of 2 Koreas, proving that sometimes siblings just can't share a room.